David Moore, Equity Advantage, with Robert Smith of Peregrine Private Capital, and we are going to talk. I like your cufflinks, by the way.
Oh, those are
very
thanks.
Nice.
Just had those made, dude. Those are like vintage $5 gold pieces.
Wow, $5 gold piece that was worth $5 when they were minted, and today are worth a little bit more, probably.
Think about it. I got I got a $20 gold piece that was minted. End of the 19th century, and at that point in time, it bought $20 worth of goods. Okay?
Yes.
That same $20 gold piece, because there is 1 ounce of gold in a $20 gold piece, is now worth $2,000. So you want to know the extent to which your central bank has debased your currency.
Oh.
What you could buy with $20 prior to the advent of the Federal Reserve Bank now costs you $2,000, okay? I mean, that's something to chew on, okay?
You got to read You'll Own Nothing, right?
Yeah.
Or Atlas Shrugged.
Right.
And you look at this stuff and you think, okay, they're going to learn at some point, but they don't. I mean, I know you're very studious with your history, and you just look at it, you go, we've done this before.
Been there, done that.
Been there, done that. And what they call it, the politicians of the money tree, right?
Right.
It's going to just keep growing. Everything's going to be fine. Nothing to see here. Move along. Anyway, so if we're back to, like I said, the last segment went long. So we're going to pick up where we left off. We'll talk a little bit about, for the people that are tired of dealing with their headaches, but they don't want to pay the tax. Obviously, the exchange is going to allow you to get in stuff. And just for future context, too, what the latest proposal, once again with the budget this year, is to cap individual deferral at $500,000, and as a married couple, you get $1 million in deferred gain with respect to 1031 annually. So, what do you think that's going to do to the market? And you might say, I actually had brokers. The last time this was proposed, I had a couple brokers say, well, my market stuff doesn't cost that much. It's not going to impact me, so I don't care. Could you imagine that?
No.
I actually had a broker mad at me that I was playing politics because I was letting her know what was being proposed. It was crazy. Anyway, so if you're looking at potential 1031 products, and by the way, 1031, if you're working from your home, you sell your house, the home office, if you're treating it as a home office, a lot of you might be there after COVID. Your tax people say, hey, let's treat the home office as a home office. If you've been doing that for more than 3 out of the last 5 years, you sell that home, that piece of your home's got to be 1031. Or you might have a house on acreage. You got the house, it's going to go Section 121, the working land 1031. We've got lots of people today, and you think about Section 121, the universal exclusion. It was put in play in 1997, gives you $250 individually or $500,000 as a married couple. It's not a one-time thing. You can do it once every 2 years. That meant something then, but how many people on the sale of their home today? I mean, you could have, we joke about the house that you grew up in Palo Alto as, a couple thousand square feet or, even smaller than 1,200 square feet. And that thing's $3-4 million today, right? So
just sold for
2.7 million. All right. So you think about that 250 or 500 exclusion, what it does for somebody selling their home. So we've got lots of people, the reason I'm bringing it up, lots of people that will just say, move out of the home. And you don't have to rent it. You're just using it as an investment. And the reason I say that is, you're looking at a situation where if your gains on the sale of the home exceed the 250 or 500, you got a choice: pay the tax or do something else. Maybe use a QOZ or OZ to take care of some of the overage. And we'll talk about that, or you move out and season the property as an investment, maybe a year. And as I said, it doesn't have to be rented. And when you sell it, you still fit the 2 out of 5 for the exclusion. Then the overage, you go throw money into a DST or whatever else you want to do. But it's really arming yourself with information and knowing what's possible. And I always say the only dumb question is the one you don't ask. So if we're looking at ways to keep people's money theirs, we've got a variety of different things. We talked about diversification, not only of asset type, but geographic. But there's a couple of different instruments that are commonly used, and the DST is not that old, but it's sort of evolved out of needs. And before that, we had sort of the institutional tenancy in common investment that was there. And Bob, you want to sort of compare and contrast the two a little bit, maybe so people understand?
Oh, they're both great. DST is now the dominant product type in the space. That being said, as you just said, TIC's been around forever and a day, tenant in common, but not a problem, but the potential rub or issue with a TIC is that if anything, any decision with regard to management of that property or properties requires unanimous consent on the part of all investors. And so that's why TIC's great for if you've got a family group or a small group of friends, that have been together forever and a day, have a long history of investing, and have a streamlined decision-making process. Great, it's going to work fine. Okay. However, in terms of larger properties and a format that invites more investors into it, that's an issue. Because in 2007, 2008, when the single-family housing market crashed, and it had a big ripple-out effect on other types of real estate, there were all kinds of TIC properties that needed substantive management changes, decisions being made. And that was almost impossible to do or to arrive at, because people, when they do TICs or DSTs, are usually doing them because they want to disengage from active property management. So getting everybody back together again to make decisions during a crisis is like herding cats. It's very difficult. And even if you manage to do that, there's usually, if you have a larger group, always a spoiler. Someone who just wants to be an outlier and a fly in the ointment. So there were a number of TIC properties that went down, not because they weren't good properties, but because decisions couldn't be reached with regard to their management in a timely manner. And that's the principal difference between TIC and DST, is with a DST property, all decision-making with regard to how that property is operated, including ultimate sale, is vested in management. So, so they are in a position to make timely decisions with regard to the operation of that property if and when that is needed. And it's simply a more efficient format, particularly where a larger group of investors are concerned. And, another, I think, significant difference is that the debt that encumbers all DST properties is non-recourse debt to the investor, meaning the investor doesn't have to go out and qualify for a loan. The investor's not on the hook for the loan. The signatory trustee of the loan is the property sponsor, and so they're responsible for that. So investors get the benefit of debt. If you're in a positive leverage environment, increased cash flow, you can send interest expense against cash flow at year end along with depreciation. And so you get all the good parts of debt and very, very few of the bad parts of debt. And that is not necessarily the case with tenant common properties.
Yeah, well, we've got a couple of sponsors we work with for a long time in the institutional TICs. And I guess, a couple of points I'd like to make is, one, it's tenancy in common. That's what TIC is. But I mean, you're typically looking at a single asset.
It's an insect.
Right? Single asset.
It's a noxious little insect that bites you.
Yeah, my nickname was Tick when I was a kid, because I'd be sitting there asleep. I guess I'd nip my parents or whatever. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, it's a term near and dear to my heart, right? Anyway, so but if you look at the institutional TICs, I mean, potentially, I mean, if people are using that format, I mean, a DST's got to be a stabilized asset. That debt's there. It's all non-recourse. You can't be screwing around with the assets, right? Where the institutional TIC is typically being used as the investment vehicle because of it's a value add situation a lot of times. So you're looking at not just the cash flow of the asset, but and I know we've gone full cycle with you with so many things where the returns have been wonderful, way beyond what was there, and future performance not predicated by past returns, blah, blah, blah. But I can say that, he can't. I'm not selling any real estate, or I'm not selling any of that stuff. But, if you look at I sort of look at the two and say, okay, a tick, you're filling the bucket with the investors typically to buy the asset. Everyone's signing, to your point, on the bottom line to get the loan. And you're looking at that structure. You need to understand what the tick agreement says on this stuff. But there's definitely a great place for it, and it's worked well. But it's different in nature than the DST. The DST, you're really looking at a situation where the sponsor owns the asset, and if somebody comes to you, Bob, how long does it take for you? I mean, if somebody was set, committed, and we closed on their down leg today, how long would it take to get them into one of the DST offerings that you work with regularly? I mean, it's
24, 48 hours. It's virtually instantaneous. Once the investor decides that's the property they want, then all that has to be done is subscription documents specific to that property are completed. That probably takes an hour. Similar documents specific to purchase of the property are completed. That probably takes another hour. It's then submitted to our broker-dealer. They take 24 hours to review it. Then they pass it after approval. Then they pass it along to the DST sponsor. And so, within 48 hours, the DST sponsor is going to be working directly with you, the qualified intermediary, to get them close and cash flowing on that equity. So
I want to stress again, it's non-recourse debt. You're not going out having to apply for this stuff. So just keep that in mind. You do have to be an accredited investor, but I mean, you can get that money to work right away because the sponsor owns it. Bob also made a comment about, you like a property. What percentage of the DST offerings are a property versus multiple properties, though? Because it doesn't have to be one. It's very common for it to be multiple.
That's a very good point, David. The DST products matured very well 25 years ago when we started the industry, and we were president of creation of the product. We are the oldest retailer in the DST space, and by volume, one of the largest. Little pitch.
You can do that. It's your show.
It was usually one DST, one property. As it's evolved, oftentimes they look like very small REITs. By way of example, we have one DST property program on market. It's a single DST, but it has 4 separate self-storage properties in it, 4 separate freestanding properties, all in North Carolina. Some of the bigger DST offerings can have 10, 15, 20 properties. They are specific to property type. It will be multifamily, it will be self-storage, but it can be spread out over a number of different states for diversification standpoint. So it's probably, I'm guessing it's about 70-30 now. 60-40. The majority of offerings are still single properties, but we're seeing many more DST offerings that are diversified internally with multiple properties in them. Very good point.
So you've been doing this a while. And I guess I would say when you're back to understanding who you're working with, buying, selling these things, and how it all works. If you're working with a new sponsor, keep in mind it's not where you live that dictates where you're filing tax returns. It's where the money's being made. So if you've got a DST with 20 properties in 20 states, you might have 20 different tax returns that you're filing. So your tax people might be happy. What was that?
Can get complicated.
Yeah. So just be aware of that. But if you're working with, if we go back pre-crash in 06, 07, 08, we had I think there were up to 72 sponsors or something like that, roughly a handful afterwards. Mm-hmm. And now we're up into the high 50s, I believe, or maybe right around 60.
Right.
And I guess I would put it out to you that you gotta understand and work with people that have some history in it, so you know what's involved. People that have put these packages together, just understand that if it's 20 properties, 20 states, you got 20 returns. The people that have been through and around the block are probably going to put those 20 into one or a couple states instead. Yeah. And that's through experience, because I think you and I were talking about our younger days doing crazy things, and we're here to tell the stories. We're still on the right side of the grass, at least for now. But I always like to say I'm happy to learn. I get tired of being taught stuff. So really try. I think this is a period of time where I think you gotta. It's impossible to understand everything, right? And you study all the time on different things, but try to work with people. If you've got tax or legal questions on something, work with somebody that's going to give you a position, not learn on your behalf. And I think really when you're looking at picking out the assets or the brokers that you're working with in this space, and this is not Bob, this is me from my experience saying this, you don't want to be once again working with a person learning or somebody that just does this sort of as a side business. Try to be working with people that have done this and understand it and can give you the ups and downs of different assets. And right now we're just sort of comparing, contrasting DSTs to institutional techs. And I'm going to stop the conversation right after this, and we'll come back and talk briefly about the OZs. And I don't think we need to talk about 721s anymore at this point. But really, it's one of those things in life where take advantage of the resources. The only dumb questions when you don't ask, and work with people that have been through the good times, the bad times, and can tell you the stories. Because I don't care who you are. If you think you're invincible, you're going to learn that you're not at some point. And it's an interesting time, and there's lots of sort of unknowns out there. Anything you'd like to say before we sign off?
I think you're exactly right. It's because the nature of DST, it's a passive investment on the investor's part. And so it's not just property type specific. Good management can oftentimes fix a challenged property. Bad management, bad operators will almost always ruin a good one. So you and whomever you're working with have to know as much as you possibly can about the property sponsor, manager, their track record in the industry, and and what they do, or historically what they've done when times get tough. That's critical, and that's not easily learned. That takes a little bit of time. So.
Thank you, David Moore, Equity Advantage. Robert Smith, Peregrine Private Capital. Don't go away. We'll be right back.